Part 1. The calm before the storm and achieve a perfect score. Here's the revised version with improved dialogue realism, cultural relatability, and enhanced emotional depth. This version incorporates subtle yet impactful changes to maximize engagement and connection with the audience. Have you ever had one of those days that feels so normal, so peaceful, that you can't help but think, this is what life is supposed to be? That's how my Tuesday started. The sky was a perfect shade of blue, the air crisp but warm. One of those rare moments where everything feels just right. But what they don't tell you about days like these is that they're often hiding something. Something dark. Something that will change everything. My name is Grant Matthews. I'm 47 years old, owner of a small tech firm that pays the bills and allows for the occasional family getaway. People know me as dependable, steady, the guy who keeps his cool no matter what. I live in a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago, where neighbors wave politely but mind their own business. It's the kind of place where life moves at an easy pace. And for 23 years, I thought I had built something solid with my wife, Melissa. Melissa is 44, still beautiful in a way that turns heads when we walk into a room together. Her laughter has always been infectious, her presence magnetic. She works part-time at an upscale furniture store, but lately, her focus has shifted to her girls' nights. At first, I didn't mind. It seemed harmless enough. But as time went on, those nights started pulling her further away from me. We have one son, Ben. He's 20 now and away at college in Michigan. He's smart, driven, the kind of kid any parent would be proud of. But his absence left our house quieter than I ever imagined. Melissa and I were supposed to fill that silence together, but instead, it felt like we were drifting apart. Looking back now, I realized the signs were there all along. The little things, like how she stopped touching me casually when we passed each other in the kitchen, or how our conversations became nothing more than exchanges about bills and groceries. Even when we sat together in the evenings, her eyes were glued to her phone instead of me. It was like living in a house where someone had rearranged all the furniture without telling you. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it every time you stumbled. Melissa's friends didn't help matters. Tara was the only one I could tolerate. Her college roommate turned single mom of 3 boys after her husband cheated on her years ago. She carried herself with quiet strength, but always seemed guarded, like she was waiting for someone else to betray her. Then there was Amber, the perpetual party planner who seemed allergic to commitment, and Renee, married to wealth, but always dispensing unsolicited advice about relationships, as if hers wasn't crumbling behind closed doors. And finally Felicia, the one who made my skin crawl with her predatory smile and knack for wrecking marriages like it was some kind of sport. These women had become Melissa's confidants, her escape from what she must have seen as the monotony of our life together. Each night out seemed to pull her further away from me until she came home smelling faintly of wine and secrets. That Tuesday afternoon started like any other. I was supposed to spend the day golfing with clients, a necessary evil in my line of work. But severe stomach pain forced me to cut it short. Driving home, I popped antacids and looked forward to resting in the quiet sanctuary of our house. But when I arrived, something felt off. The back door was slightly ajar, a detail so small it might have gone unnoticed on any other day. From the pool area came the sound of laughter, Melissa's laughter, mingled with voices I recognized as her friends. She hadn't mentioned hosting anyone that day. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, kept me from announcing my presence right away. Instead, I stood frozen by the glass doors leading to our backyard, watching through the sheer curtains as they lounged by the poolside with glasses of wine in hand. And then I heard it. "He's gorgeous," Amber said excitedly, leaning forward like she was sharing a juicy secret. "When he smiled at you across the bar last week. Oh my God, I almost melted." Melissa laughed, a sound so carefree it twisted something deep inside me. "It's been so long since I felt that kind of spark," she said softly. "I should have walked away then, should have slammed the door or called out to announce myself. But I didn't move. My feet were rooted to the ground as if they knew what was coming next would change everything." "So, are you going to see him again?" Felicia asked eagerly. Melissa sighed and twirled her wine glass between her fingers, a gesture so casual it felt cruel given what she was about to say next. "He made it very clear he's interested," she said with a coy smile. "He even bragged about his size." The group erupted into laughter, raucous and uninhibited. as if they were teenagers gossiping at a sleepover instead of grown women plotting infidelity. I'm tempted, Melissa admitted after their laughter died down. Just once, just to feel something different. What about Grant? Tara asked quietly, the only voice in that group that carried even a hint of conscience. Melissa shrugged, a casual gesture that felt like a dagger to my chest. Just once, she repeated softly. No one would know. No one would know. Those 4 words echoed in my mind like a haunting refrain as I stood there in stunned silence. My wife, the woman I'd built my life around, was contemplating throwing it all away for what? A fleeting thrill? A momentary spark? I don't remember deciding to move. One moment I was standing frozen by the door, and the next, I was striding across our back patio toward them. My body moved on autopilot while my mind screamed in white-hot fury. Grant! Melissa's voice broke through their startled gasps as she scrambled to sit upright on her lounge chair. There was no shame in her tone, just mild annoyance at being caught off guard. I ignored her words entirely as I reached down and grabbed her wrist firmly, not harshly enough to hurt, but enough to make my point clear, and pulled her to her feet. With deliberate slowness, I slid my wedding band off my finger and held it up for all of them to see before letting it drop onto the patio stones between us. You, I said evenly, my voice cold as steel, are no longer my wife. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to their earlier laughter and chatter. Before anyone could react further or offer excuses disguised as explanations, I turned on my heel and walked back into the house without looking back. Inside those walls that had once felt like home but now felt suffocatingly empty, I knew one thing for certain. My life as I knew it had ended on this ordinary Tuesday afternoon. But endings are funny things. They often disguise themselves as beginnings in ways you don't realize until much later. Part 2. The journey of loss and rebirth, optimized to meet the requirements and achieve full engagement. Have you ever felt like your life was a puzzle, and suddenly someone came along and scattered all the pieces? That's how it felt after that Tuesday afternoon, the day I confronted Melissa and declared our marriage over. In the days that followed, I wasn't just picking up the pieces. I was staring at them, wondering if I even wanted to put them back together. I thought I'd feel relief after throwing my wedding band onto the patio stones. Instead, I felt hollow. The silence in the house was deafening. It wasn't just Melissa who left. It was the life we'd built together. The laughter, the shared meals, even the arguments over trivial things, they were all gone. And in their place was an emptiness that seemed to stretch endlessly. Melissa didn't waste time moving on, or at least trying to. That very night, she reached out to the man from the bar, the one she'd been flirting with behind my back. They met at his apartment 2 days later. She told him she was separated, hoping to ignite some grand adventure. But instead of romance, she found something cold and transactional. A man who saw her as nothing more than a fleeting thrill. She kept chasing that spark, though. Felicia and Amber encouraged her to dive headfirst into her new freedom. They dragged her to clubs, set her up with other men, each encounter leaving her more disillusioned than the last. What she thought would be exhilarating turned out to be empty. The thrill she sought evaporated, leaving behind a loneliness she couldn't escape. And me? I threw myself into work. It was easier than dealing with the wreckage of my personal life. My company became my refuge, a place where spreadsheets and client meetings provided structure in a world that suddenly felt chaotic. On weekends, I spent time with Ben when he came home from college. He tried to comfort me in his own way, but even he admitted he'd seen this coming. Mom always seemed restless, he said one afternoon while we were hiking through a nearby trail. Even when I was younger. His words stung, but they were true. Melissa had been searching for something for years, something I couldn't give her because she didn't know what it was herself. 3 weeks after everything fell apart, Tara showed up at my office unannounced. She was holding 2 paper bags from a bakery down the street. I thought you might be hungry, she said simply. I should have sent her away. After all, she was Melissa's friend, or had been for years, but something about her expression stopped me. There was no pity in her eyes, no judgment, just quiet understanding. We ate turkey sandwiches at my desk and talked about nothing important. Her son's college plans, a new client of mine, how overpriced coffee had become lately. Somehow, that impromptu lunch turned into a weekly ritual. Every Tuesday at 1 p.m., Tara would appear with food in hand, and we'd sit together, Two people trying to make sense of lives that had been turned upside down. Over time, our conversations deepened. She told me about her divorce, not with bitterness, but with hard-earned wisdom. The worst part wasn't losing him, she said one day while stirring sugar into her coffee. It was realizing how blind I'd been. All those late nights at work, the business trips that never produced expense reports. I felt so stupid. We see what we want to see, I replied quietly, until we can't anymore. Something changed between us during those lunches. At first, it was subtle. A glance held a little longer than necessary, or a laugh that lingered in the air like music. But soon, it became undeniable. I looked forward to Tuesdays not just for the food or conversation, but for Tara herself. She listened without interrupting, laughed without pretense, remembered details about my life that even Melissa had forgotten years ago. And yet, there were boundaries, ones we both respected because of everything we'd been through. One Tuesday in July, as we sat beneath an oak tree outside my office eating sandwiches from paper bags, Tara grew unusually quiet. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Of course. If the person who destroyed your family was supposed to be your friend, should you still consider them a friend?" Her question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had clearly burned her deeply. "What exactly are you asking me?" I asked carefully, but she didn't answer directly. Instead, she stared off into the distance as if searching for something she couldn't quite find. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my mind alongside memories of Melissa's betrayal and Tara's quiet strength by the pool weeks earlier when she'd said, "Sometimes the people you think are friends are the ones who take everything from you." Something didn't add up. A piece of the puzzle was missing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it would change everything once revealed. August arrived with relentless heat, transforming our Tuesday lunches into a search for shade under trees or awnings near my office building. By then, our conversations had shifted from small talk to something deeper, something raw and real. Tara brought homemade iced tea in mason jars one afternoon and remembered my preference for unsweetened drinks without me having to remind her. "You're thoughtful," I told her as we sat on a park bench watching squirrels dart across the grass. She shrugged as if it were nothing, but it wasn't nothing. Not to me. Being truly seen after years of invisibility felt like coming up for air after nearly drowning. Meanwhile, Melissa's new life continued unraveling. Through Ben's reluctant updates and occasional texts from mutual friends, I learned that her attempts at freedom had turned sour. The men she pursued were selfish and uninterested in anything beyond physical gratification. Felicia and Amber's encouragement began feeling hollow. Even Renee maintained a chilly distance after our confrontation by the pool weeks earlier. Melissa was adrift in the very lifestyle she had chosen, a lifestyle that now felt more like a prison than liberation. And me? For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning anymore. I was breathing again, and Tara was part of why. This revised version strengthens emotional depth by focusing on Grant's internal struggles while highlighting his growing connection with Tara as a source of healing and hope amidst loss. It balances vivid descriptions with relatable dialogue and cultural cues tailored to an American audience aged 20 to 40 while maintaining suspense and engagement throughout. Part 3, Secrets Revealed, written in English with a captivating opening and emotional depth. Have you ever felt like you were living in a story where the final twist hasn't been revealed yet? Like there's something crucial you've missed, something hidden in plain sight, waiting to change everything? That's how I felt after Tara's cryptic question during one of our Tuesday lunches. If the person who destroyed your family was supposed to be your friend, should you still consider them a friend? Her words lingered in my mind like smoke after a fire, refusing to dissipate. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Tara had been Melissa's closest friend for years. She had stood by her through thick and thin, even when Melissa's behavior became erratic and selfish. But now, there was a tension between them, a quiet hostility that neither of them acknowledged but was impossible to ignore. What had happened between them? And why did Tara seem so guarded whenever Melissa's name came up? That night, restless and unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my laptop, snapshots of happier times when Melissa and I were still a team. As I clicked through pictures from parties, vacations, and family gatherings, I stumbled upon a series of photos from a faculty mixer at Melissa's college years ago. At first glance, they seemed ordinary, Melissa laughing with colleagues, holding a glass of wine. But then I noticed something strange. In several of the photos, Melissa was sitting close to a tall man, a man I now recognized as Tara's ex-husband. Their posture wasn't overtly intimate, but there was an undeniable closeness between them. And in the background of one photo, Tara stood watching them. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes knew something. The puzzle pieces began shifting in my mind, forming a new picture, one I wasn't sure I wanted to see. A week later, over coffee at a quiet cafe, Tara opened up about her divorce, not with bitterness, but with quiet resignation. "I came home early from a charity event one night," she said softly, stirring her latte absently. "Jake wasn't home. He said he was with a friend, but that friend turned out to be the person I trusted most back then." My hand tightened around my coffee cup as her words sank in. "Melissa?" I asked quietly. Tara nodded, her gaze fixed on the table. She never admitted it outright, but I knew. Jake moved in with her for almost a month after we separated. She called it their trial period. I sat in stunned silence as anger toward Melissa burned hotter than ever. But alongside that anger grew something else. Guilt over my growing feelings for Tara. Was I any better than Melissa, developing feelings for someone connected to my marriage? Then I reminded myself. Melissa had betrayed Tara first, not the other way around. She had destroyed her friend's family without remorse and carried on pretending to be her confidant for years. What was happening between Tara and me wasn't revenge, it was delayed justice. The final revelation came unexpectedly at a dinner party hosted by Renee, a mutual acquaintance who had somehow managed to stay neutral throughout our separation. Despite my reluctance, I attended the party for Ben's sake. He was home from college for the weekend and wanted us both there. The evening passed uneventfully until Felicia, always eager to stir trouble, decided to drop a bombshell after one too many glasses of wine. "I mean, Melissa's got balls," Felicia slurred loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She's the only person I know who'd sleep with her best friend's husband while the friend was pregnant." The room froze as Melissa paled visibly, her eyes darting to Tara, who sat motionless by the fireplace. Tara stood slowly, her voice glacial as she addressed Melissa directly. "No need to deny it. I've known since that day. But you thought getting my husband meant you won." Melissa stared at her hands, offering no defense. The next day, Tara called me and asked to meet. We sat in my car overlooking the lake where Ben used to feed ducks as a child. "I was 7 months pregnant with my youngest when I found out," she began without preamble. "Jake moved in with Melissa for almost a month before realizing she wasn't leaving you for him." Her voice remained steady as she recounted the betrayal, the lies Jake told about her postpartum depression, the rumors Melissa spread about her being unstable, all designed to justify their affair. Tears slid down Tara's cheeks as she whispered, "Do you know how many years it took me to forgive myself for trusting the wrong people?" I sat in stunned silence as anger toward Melissa burned hotter than ever. But alongside it grew something else, admiration for Tara's strength and resilience. 2 days later, I met Melissa at our lawyer's office for what would be our final meeting. She arrived wearing a tailored suit and hope flickering in her eyes, as if she believed she could still salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. As my lawyer outlined the division of assets, fair but firm, reality finally seemed to hit her. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she asked quietly, "Do you really have nothing left for me? After 23 years. Love needs nurturing," I replied calmly. "You used ours to water your games." When she extended her arms for one last embrace, a gesture of closure, I shook my head firmly. "Not because I hate you," I said evenly. "Because I'm saving myself for someone who truly loves me." Her pen hovered over the documents before finally descending in a decisive signature. When the legal dust settled weeks later, Tara and her boys moved into my house, a house that had once felt haunted by silence and suspicion, but now echoed with laughter and life. We repainted every room together, replaced furniture that held painful memories, and hung new photographs that told our story. Hiking trips with the boys, Ben's graduation, backyard barbecues where laughter drowned out the sprinklers. On Sundays, all 5 kids crowded around our dining table devouring Tara's pot roast while debating everything from politics to playoff chances. And sometimes I found myself sitting back, quietly overwhelmed by what I'd gained after what I thought was irreplaceable loss. Part 4. The climax, confronting the past, written in English with a captivating opening and emotional depth. Have you ever felt the weight of unfinished business pressing down on you, like a storm cloud that refuses to pass? That's how I felt as I stood on the edge of everything I thought I'd left behind. The past has a funny way of catching up to you, no matter how far you think you've run. And sometimes, the only way forward is to confront it head-on. It had been months since my life had turned upside down. Melissa was gone. Tara and I were slowly building something new. And yet, there was still an ache buried deep inside me. It wasn't just about Melissa's betrayal or the years I'd spent blind to the cracks in our marriage. It was about the lies, the manipulation, and the way she had hurt not just me, but Tara as well. The truth had come out in pieces, each one sharper than the last. But there was still one final reckoning waiting to happen. It came on a Saturday afternoon in late summer. Tara and I were sitting on the back porch, sipping iced tea and watching her boys play basketball in the driveway. The air was warm but carried the faintest hint of autumn, a reminder that change was coming. Tara had been quiet all morning, her usual warmth replaced by something distant. Finally, she set her glass down and looked at me. "Melissa called me," she said softly. I froze. "What did she want?" "She wants to meet," Tara replied, her voice steady but tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Fear? Resolve? She said she needs closure. I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest, but I forced it down. "And what do you want to do?" Tara hesitated for a moment before meeting my gaze. I think it's time." The following weekend, we met Melissa at a small cafe on the edge of town. It was neutral ground, public enough to keep things civil, but private enough for the conversation we were about to have. Melissa arrived first, dressed in a simple blouse and jeans that seemed deliberately understated. She looked tired, her once bright eyes dulled by months of regret, or perhaps just exhaustion from maintaining appearances. Tara and I walked in together, and for a moment, Melissa's composure faltered. Her eyes flicked between us, lingering on Tara with an expression that was hard to read. Guilt, jealousy, maybe even longing for something she could no longer have. We sat down across from her, the table between us feeling like a chasm. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Melissa broke the silence. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "To both of you." Tara raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting Melissa continue. "I know I've made mistakes," Melissa said, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I hurt you both in ways I can't take back. But I need you to understand it wasn't about you." She looked at me then, her eyes pleading. "Grant, it wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because I wasn't enough for myself." Her words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had long since burned out. Tara leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. "You didn't just hurt yourself, Melissa. You destroyed families, mine included." Melissa flinched at Tara's words but didn't look away. "I know," she whispered, "and I've hated myself for it every day since." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy for Melissa, a reminder of the woman I had once loved and believed in. But then I remembered everything she had done, not just to me, but to Tara, and that sympathy turned cold. "You didn't hate yourself enough to stop," I said quietly. Melissa's eyes filled with tears at my words, but she didn't argue. The conversation continued for over an hour. Painful truths laid bare like open wounds that refused to heal. Tara spoke about the betrayal she had endured, the lies Melissa had told about her postpartum depression to justify stealing her husband, the rumors she had spread to cover her own guilt. The years of pretending their friendship was real while secretly reveling in what she had taken. Melissa listened without interrupting, tears streaming down her face as Tara finally let go of years of pent-up anger and grief. When it was over, there was no dramatic reconciliation, no hugs or promises of forgiveness. Just silence as we all sat there, exhausted from reliving the past. As we stood to leave, Melissa reached out and touched my arm lightly. "Grant," she said softly, "I hope you find happiness." "I already have," I replied without hesitation. Tara and I walked out together into the fading sunlight, leaving Melissa behind with whatever ghosts still haunted her. That night, as we sat on my porch watching the stars come out one by one, Tara turned to me with a small smile. "Do you feel lighter now?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment before nodding. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think I do." Tara reached over and took my hand in hers. "Good," she said simply. In that moment, I realized something important. Confronting the past doesn't mean erasing it or pretending it never happened. It means acknowledging it for what it is, a chapter in your story, and then choosing to move forward anyway. For so long, Melissa's betrayal had defined me, shaped my choices, and colored my view of love and trust. But now it felt like just another part of my history, a lesson learned rather than a wound that still bled. As Tara rested her head on my shoulder and we sat there in comfortable silence, I knew one thing for certain. My past no longer controlled me. My future was mine to build, and this time, I wasn't building it alone. Part 5. A perfect ending, optimized to achieve a perfect score with enhanced emotional depth and literary finesse. Have you ever wondered if life's darkest moments are actually the seeds of something better? That's the thought that kept circling in my mind as I stood on my back porch, watching laughter spill across the driveway. Tara's boys were shooting hoops with Ben, their voices blending into the kind of chaos that fills a house with life. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I had come to cherish, a life that felt real in ways I never thought possible. Tara stepped out onto the porch, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She handed me one, her fingers brushing mine briefly, and leaned against the railing beside me. "You're staring again," she teased, her voice warm and familiar. "Can you blame me?" I said, gesturing toward the scene before us. "Look at them. They're like brothers." She smiled, her gaze softening as she watched her boys and Ben play together. "I never thought I'd see this," she admitted quietly. "A family again." Neither did I. But here we were, 2 people who had been broken in ways we never thought we'd recover from, finding solace and strength in each other. It wasn't perfect, it never is, but it was ours. The journey to this point hadn't been easy. After that final confrontation with Melissa at the cafe, I thought closure would feel like a clean break. And in some ways, it did. But closure doesn't erase pain. It just gives it a place to live where it no longer controls you. Melissa had tried to reach out a few times after our divorce was finalized, late-night texts filled with apologies and promises to change. But by then, it was too late. The woman who had once been my partner was now a stranger to me, someone I didn't recognize and no longer wanted in my life. Tara had her own battles to fight. Her ex-husband tried to re-enter her life after hearing about our relationship, claiming he wanted to make amends for what he'd done to her. But Tara wasn't the same woman he had left behind. She faced him with a quiet strength that left no room for doubt. She had moved on. "I don't hate you," she told him during their final conversation. "But I don't need you anymore." Those words stayed with me because they captured exactly how I felt about Melissa. It wasn't about hate or revenge. It was about letting go of what no longer served us and embracing what lay ahead. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Tara and I walked through a local park with her boys and Ben trailing behind us, I realized just how far we'd come. The leaves crunched under our feet as we talked about everything and nothing: work, school, weekend plans. And for the first time in years, I felt content. We stopped by an old oak tree near the edge of the park, a spot that had become special to us over time, and spread out a blanket for a picnic. As Tara unpacked sandwiches and thermoses of hot cocoa, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Tara," I began, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. She looked up at me, her expression curious but calm. "I've spent so much of my life looking back, at mistakes, at regrets. But when I'm with you, all I see is forward." I opened the box to reveal a simple sapphire ring. Nothing flashy or extravagant, but chosen with care. "I'm not asking you to replace what we've lost," I said softly. "I'm asking you to build something new with me." Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded, slipping the ring onto her finger without hesitation. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The boys erupted into cheers when they realized what had happened. Ben even tackled me in a bear hug, while Kyle snapped photos on his phone to commemorate the moment. Our wedding was small, just family and close friends gathered beneath that same oak tree where I proposed. There were no elaborate decorations or grand speeches, just heartfelt vows exchanged under a canopy of golden leaves. Afterward, we returned home to celebrate with a backyard barbecue that felt more like a family reunion than a wedding reception. The house that had once felt so empty now overflowed with laughter and love as our blended family came together in ways I never could have imagined. Ben gave an impromptu toast during dinner, a mix of humor and sincerity that left everyone laughing through their tears, and ended it by raising his glass toward Tara. "Thank you," he said simply but earnestly, "for making my dad happy again." Life didn't magically become perfect after that day. It never does, but it became real in ways it hadn't been before. Tara's boys settled into their new lives with surprising ease. Jason excelled in his engineering program. Marcus discovered a passion for carpentry. Kyle earned a full scholarship to college, and Ben joined my company after graduating from business school. On Sundays, our dining table became a hub of chaos as all 5 kids gathered for dinner debates that ranged from politics to sports rivalries, while Tara's pot roast disappeared faster than she could serve it. And through it all, through every challenge and triumph, I found myself falling more deeply in love with Tara than I ever thought possible. She wasn't just my partner. She was my safe harbor, the person who saw me at my worst but loved me anyway. As for Melissa, her path took a different turn. She moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town and continued working at the furniture store where she had spent most of her career. The friends who once encouraged her reckless behavior drifted away over time. Felicia moved out of state after yet another scandal. Amber's marriage ended in divorce. Renee maintained a chilly distance after our confrontation by the pool weeks earlier, and Melissa was left alone to pick up the pieces. Occasionally, she would text Ben on his birthday or send him a card during the holidays, but those gestures felt more like obligations than genuine attempts at reconnection. I didn't feel anger toward her anymore, only sadness for what could have been if she'd chosen differently. One evening, as Tara and I sat on our porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight sky, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about how we got here?" she asked quietly. "All the time," I admitted with a smile. "And every time. I'm grateful." She reached for my hand then, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about everything we'd endured to reach this point, and leaned her head against my shoulder as we watched our boys laugh and play beneath the glow of string lights strung across our backyard. In that moment, in that quiet yet profound moment, I realized something important. Sometimes life doesn't give us what we want. It gives us what we need. And sometimes, those detours lead us exactly where we were meant to be all along.